You people seeing this at some other time and some other place on the tape, or you people who can do it without benefit of a tape. I haven't said it recently, but let me say again, I understand that somebody could show up and see these tapes at another time, another place, and find themselves initially interested, and then feel, perhaps the next tape, the next few tapes, that they're not quite sure what it is. And they're not quite sure they like me, or they're not quite sure they like the way I look, or the way I talk, or when I used to use the F word before cable stopped me. Farina. One little thing, just so that you'll know I do think about it, I am aware of the fact that each of these tapes, you might be walking in, let us say, and seeing this for the first time, the second time, the third time, and you are interested, but you feel as though you did walk in the middle of a maelstrom and you're not sure where it starts. I cannot, will not, do not give a preface every time we tape. We're doing these right now in 1989 3 times a week. I'm aware of the fact that although you may find for some nonverbal, inexplicable reason that you're first interested in it and you wonder, could you have a bit more of some basic terminology or some sort of introduction to this? I understand that. There's just simply none available. I don't do it every night, but I've never done it. There's really no tape that we've ever made that is an introduction to this. And to wrap up this little non-preface preface for the night, let me point out that even though I refer to it as having no name, and I normally just say this or this kind of stuff, that's really, even though that's not a name, that is really closer to a generic name for it, is this kind of stuff. But there is a difference between this kind of stuff and what I'm doing. And the point is, with no fake humility, it's just a fact, and if you can't hear it, you're not going to hear much of this. I am not the point. I do understand, I know how life works, that somebody could think they're interested in this, let's say, and hear an audio tape and then see a video and just be repelled and just no longer listen to it. That can't be helped. I don't have time to get a nose job or a near job, even if I wanted to. But that is simply the way life is. I don't take it personally. You shouldn't take it personally. But what I wanted to say is, even though I say things, to save from having to get too circuitous with the conversation, as I know I at times say I, and I have warned some people, and so here's a chance to do it again on tape. Anytime I say I, or I say something about, well, I don't like so-and-so, or I think so-and-so, that is burlesque. Because I have never on tape told anybody what I like, what I don't like, anything. Anytime I say I take it as a joke. Or anytime I say, it is. It's burlesque. Sometimes I'll admit it may skate close to satire, but it's actually burlesque. That is, skating close to satire in that there is a certain amount of potential vice and folly in even saying I and then taking people as a joke beforehand and afterhand, because many times people forget it and go, well, So try and remember there is a difference, which there's no more an easy way for me to point out the difference than there is for me to put a name on this. There is a difference in whatever this is. This kind of stuff has always been going on throughout the ages of man as long as he could talk. It's been going on somewhere. And I'm not saying it's not going on in some version somewhere else on this planet now. I am not the living end. I am not the final word in this kind of stuff. Nobody is. Even the stuff ain't. Because if the stuff was, if this kind of stuff is its own living, which I guess it's got to be, exemplary, if it's its own epitome, or for you people in New Jersey and Alabama, epitome. Somebody from there one time told me how to pronounce it. Even if this stuff were its own living example yesterday, it's not anymore today. That is, whatever you took to be the living example of this thing being itself yesterday is now outdated, much less any particular human. Which ties in, by the way, with, let's drop the preface and go on to the grand opening. We could have a timpani roll, and I'll start for tonight. That was the preface. It's just, if you find this of interest, however many times you run across it on these tapes, remember, no way am I it. Not just me, but anybody. And if you needed any protection, which I'm not here to protect anybody, see, I didn't say I. That was just a joke. Anybody that presents themselves as being the living epitome of anything, you got two choices. If they're true, that is, if somebody says, I am the living fount, I am the epicenter, I am the complete package and repository of anything. If they're talking about Christianity, Judaism, Reformed Buddhism, or anything, if they said, I am it, well, you got two choices, trust me. One is they're not correct, okay? The second one is, let's assume in a three-dimensional world, the other example's got to be this, that it is true. Now, if it is true, let me ask you this, if you got any potential for new intelligence, which is worse? That you're going to run across some human, another human, unless you are just that hard up for a hero and you want to dance backwards that bad. That is, you'll just believe anything the person can say. Yes, at night I never sleep, I never eat, and I can flow through the air, and I can do almost anything with my records, and the IRS never audits me. Just something unbelievable. So you can believe that if you want to, but back to the reality of the second version, if somebody actually said, I am the living epitome, I encompass everything that's known about some subject, some belief system. If that's true, I'm suggesting to you that have any potential for anything, even though I ask you, I go ahead and tell you, you'd be worse off. Do you follow? That if it's true that this sucker is it, that he started off, or she did, talking about something that interests you, whatever it was, some sort of belief system, or they claim to be the current teacher in some line of some kind of secret information, new information. So if they say that, I'm telling you, I'll just go ahead and tell you the second possibility. The first, remember, is that they're not correct, which is fair enough for somebody to say, I can fly. You don't tell them to jump off a building. Of course, they're probably going to be too busy or have to check with you later, but at least you can find out, well, it's not true. And you might think, well, that's pretty dangerous, especially if I was standing there and say, let's see you do it, and they fell on me. But the second possibility, if indeed you wanted something new, I'm suggesting would be even worse, because what if it is correct? I still feel like enough of you didn't get it. Maybe I should have made it a Kairoot. Which is the worst? The worst is, what if that sucker is it? That he is telling the truth, that everything that's known, everything that can be experienced about this subject is in me. If you had any sense, I'd suggest to you that you find a new area of interest. No matter who it is, because there's some human that said that they are the Alpha and the Omega. They are the living example from top to bottom of whatever it is. You know, it ain't much. It ain't. So I just wanted to point that out, even though I'll say things about this kind of stuff. When I say this kind of stuff, many times I'll be using some sort of apparent example, which is a form of burlesque, maybe having to do with this or something I said. But in truth, when I say this kind of stuff, I would be what we're doing here. Anything that seems to come from me would be like a temporary and actually meaningless brand name applied to the real generic reality of this. And it's very passing. And there's no one is a living example, the beginning and the end of it. That does not belie something else, but I don't have time for it. Here we go. End of preface. That's the part of the book to have all the little Roman numerals that you can't figure. Now into a big one, an Arabic number that we all understand. First page, first paragraph of the night. How about this? Believe it or not, fortuitously enough, I'm going to segue it partly into the preface. All belief systems, all apparent non-ordinary information, all religions, to give you a real primitive example, but all forms that seem to hold some promise of new information or to try and give some new paradigm, some new blueprint to how people should behave. All of them are of a very similar nature. Specifically, they all present a grand design for humanity. No exception. A grand design. Whereas, may I point out to you that this kind of stuff, when it's actually alive, that is, you're not reading about it in a book and dreaming about it, but this alive is so vague and so sketchy that it is just barely applicable for any individual. I do not bring this up. Remember, I said I is a burlesque. I'm making, remember, fun of something that life takes seriously. See, fun of somebody else's work, not mine, somebody else's. It's another example, not just of me trying to point out the difference between this and ordinary life, because that's no consequence, or to say that this in some way is superior to ordinary life. It's not. If you're ordinary life can't be beat. There'll nothing replace ordinary life if you're ordinary, because there's nothing wrong with ordinary life if you're ordinary. It's just right. Even if you're bitching about it, even if you're getting a sunburn and your corn's hurt and people keep stepping on you, it's just right. If it wasn't, you'd do something about it. This, when it is actually alive, somewhere, is so non-specific that you can see clearly and feel it in your own nervous system how everything else, all the way from the major religions, it's not limited to that, but that's just the easiest example for most people to grasp, that to all sorts of more splintered and even down to what would appear to be individual little packages of beliefs, dreams that people have picked up, that if I could do so-and-so, if I could lose 100 pounds, if I could meditate nonstop for 22 days, if I could fast, if I could do something, there would be this great change in me. But wherever they picked it up from, if you went back, even if a person said, I do not belong to a group, and you said, yeah, but didn't you say that you believe that something miraculous would happen if you could do so-and-so, if you could stand on one foot for 2.5 years? And they go, yeah. Well, you'd find out they got it somewhere. And wherever they got it, it was part of a grand design. Now, let me expand it, because I can tell at least people here and out there on tape at some other time and some other place. I'll leave it to you, but right here, too many people have missed it again. Of course, it is Monday, but if it wasn't Monday, it'd be some other day. So, sure is interesting how easy excuses can come and then go just as fast as you can say them. Just, well, I hadn't felt too good. Well, I never feel good. That sort of thing. Well, I should forgive myself because I don't feel good. Yeah, but I act the same way when I do feel good. I'm speaking when I say I, not me. Remember. All right, people are wired up and primed. They are wired up. The chemicals, the electrical system in man, the thinking animal, is wired up in such a way that whenever anyone thinks about any sort of new information, some kind of new belief system, a new religion, a new book, a set of new ideas that would hold out the promise of changing the person, whatever form it came in, they think of it. Anybody's interested in it, it's just the way everyone's wired up. They think about it as being into extreme specific. That if the system is going to be operational to you, it is going to be just exemplary in its specificity. That it's going to tell you exactly what to do. Think about it. What sane person, educated, reasonable person would try and convert to a new religion, to take up with some new belief system, if it had these major potholes in it? Or if they held out the Vedi Mecum and said, here's everything you need to know, and you looked through, and the printer or somebody, there were just whole handfuls of blank pages that would be running along on one page telling you what to do, and you turn the pages, it said, and also, on every other Thursday, you should also be sure, and you turn the page and it's blank. All right, enough of my silly examples. Everyone is wired up and primed to think in this way. It doesn't even require analyzation. As always, when I point out these sorts of things, nobody analyzes that way. And if I in some way tried to get ordinary people's attention, some ordinary piece of intelligence, point this out, they'd say, well, nobody ever thinks about that because it is self-evident. That is, I would not undertake some new belief system. I would not try and accept some religion, some philosophy, unless it was in some way complete and specific. Why else would you go to the trouble? Why would you go and take up with a new religion? If let's still use that. That's the easiest. If you decided, well, I've gone too long being an agnostic or an Episcopalian, whichever comes first. What I should do is go back to the religion or undertake a religion, because I need something to give my life direction, or whatever it is. I need something to fulfill my life. Who would undertake a religion if you got there and you checked out some of the religions and you asked a few questions like, well, what do you believe about worship, or what do you believe about diet, or whatever it is that religions are still involved with, and you run across a religion and you would have some of the specific questions. Well, what's your feeling about sex? And the guy say, you know what? We never thought about that. We don't have one. Well, now, the average person, the middle class, the middle of the bell curve in humanity within life's body, that, enough of you left, you see that most people would go, well, wait a minute. This is some kind of cut-rate religion. Or you don't have any theories, no dogmas, no teachings on sex. And the guy goes, no, well, I never even thought about it. Now, I suggest most people would walk away. You would expect it. All right, let's get to the more specific. People who are serious about this, which people that are going to do it are serious. You expect, whether you're going to avail yourself or try to live by each and every one of them, you, without any analysis, without any question, expect this new belief system, or any belief system, to be, whether it says so or not, but a grand design. Capital G, capital D, that is, that it tells you exactly, if the question arises in you, what to do. Variations would be, you could put under what to do, you can put parenthetically what to think, what to say. But just normally, when people are talking about it, they would talk about it in such a way as the religion should tell me what to do. Because again, the areas of thinking is really beyond the area of ordinary religion. Behavior seems to be the secondary manifestation of what this kind of stuff would be if it were secondary. So it is, what should I do? What should I do about alcohol? What is the teachings of this group, this church, this philosophy, this religion? What is the teaching? You would expect in all the areas, and they've already been surely identified by now, all of the, quote, important areas in the development of the human spirit, soul, whatever. That is, whatever it came up with, you could go to the priest or the rabbi or whatever he was called and say, by the way, the little booklet I read, I'm trying to join up here, it doesn't say anything about jewelry, or it doesn't say anything about what kind of entertainment one should do, or it doesn't say anything about diet. Do you have any teachings about? And you would expect in the areas that have already been, for whatever reason, conclusively proven to be an intricate part of religion throughout the world, that this group would have something to say, that I want to know what to do. No, those of you who've been around this, at least the way my form of this, you might say, that the living examples in this case, you've got what's been going on here to go by, but I would assure you it's not dissimilar to what has gone on before. That which would seem to be the desire, the areas that would even seem to demand that there be some exactness about how one should behave, what one should do. When you get into this, when it's alive, those kind of same areas are addressed, you might say, in such a weightless manner, as the areas seem to almost say naught to ordinary ears. You know, what to do? All right, note this, at least note this, that ordinary people, and don't get hung up on me using religion as an example, because it has nothing to do with the ordinary concept that there is some sort of spirituality involved. It would be trying to accept new ways to direct your behavior. No ordinary sane person would undertake to pursue, even theoretically, even to read about, to discuss anything, any new design, any new template about how to behave, unless it was specific. Now, enough of you laughed, you saw that you would not put up with anybody, if you're ordinary, that said, we'll teach you how to increase your memory. Well, I'm all for that. Well, sign up here and pay the fee over there, and you go in and they say, well, memory is a tricky thing. A lot of people forget things. And many people here forget things. You go, yeah, me. And you go, yeah, well, we suspected that because we've been in business now for going on 3 decades, and we found many people that sign up for these courses have a bad memory. And so what we're going to try to do is, we want everybody to, make your memory better. Are there any questions? Maybe somebody says, well, how do we go about it? And you say, well, one thing, do you forget a lot? The person asks a question, they go, yeah. And you say, well, all right, try and cut down, don't forget so much. Going along those lines, it just becomes ridiculous. And yet, at least you denote any cynicism or ordinary run-of-the-mill sarcasm in your laughter. Look at this. Look how long you've been coming here. And if you want a living example of a lack, may I admit, of specificity, is this not it? It is so vague as to almost seem inapplicable. What are you going to do with this? It sounds interesting, but what's that got to do with, what am I going to do? Does that mean, should I continue to cross-dress and laugh at Unitarians or eat cantaloupes on Thursday? What should I actually do about all this? So notice when this stuff is alive in a certain way, the kind of people who will become attracted to it and become involved with it in a 3-dimensional world, it is safe to say, will accept that which goes in an absolutely irrational, non-linear direction, if there was such a thing in the 3D world. That is, to undertake to apparently try and align oneself, then try to become actively involved with something that has no grand design. And by grand design, when I start out the opening paragraph, grand design, let me make it a full, grand design for humanity. Capital G, D, little f, big H. Grand design for humanity, that is, all the major religions. Back to them. They say that there is a message through their prophets or through their deities of some sort of salvation. There's got to be a hook to every song. There's got to be a payoff or people wouldn't do it. That we're all done for. And of course, everybody realizes they're going to die, and they say, yeah, but join up with us. But there is a grand design. That is, they present it. It's no secret. It seems to be part of the impetus and the energy of the religion. That is, although right now we're a small religion, here it is, say, Muhammad and his brothers and some friends. It's just us, and we're here in Medina or wherever. And some of you are hearing the truth. Allah sent us the right truth, but wait a minute. It's not just for us. It's for everybody. And of course, the Christians say the same thing. It's for everybody. But God wants those poor, misled Muslims to straighten up and to read the Bible and to light candles and come to Rome. Quit going to that other place and come to Rome on a visit. The grand design is inherent in it. I'm not making fun of it. It is a part of it. It is not in the mainstream of life's needs that there be any sort of, again, I'm using religion, but that's not the only example, but a religion that does not offer a grand design for humanity. It does not say Christianity, Buddhism, no religions, and other systems when they are wide enough, when they're expansive enough that they become in some way important to life at some particular time and place, which I'll leave it to you to define. They have to offer a grand design, it's inherent in it, for everyone. No one thinks about it, again, no one analyzes it. People do not go into the original proclamation or the advertisements for the religion and say, wait a minute, is this a grand design for everyone? If it was not, something would happen. It would grab people's attention in a negative way. Life would be very quickly, I suggest to you, disposing of it. It would have to change its direction. Because there are no such things offered on this level, this secondary level, that are exclusive. They must offer a grand design for humanity. That is, that anybody, let us say, as foreign from one view, from one very crude but not completely untoward view, you could say, well, as foreign as Buddhism is to a native North Dakotan, a Swede, you could say, boy, is that foreign. And yet, if you were Swedish and you went and you found a Buddhist temple, well, let's discount California. Let's say you actually went and found a real one in Japan or India or China. And if you said, I am sincere, I've been reading about Buddhism, or I had a dream about Buddhism that I should be a Buddhist, but I'm actually, I won't tell you the truth in case you hadn't caught on, I'm Swedish. You know, is there any hope for me? They would say yes. We'll admit you'll be the only Swede here at the temple, but it's for everybody. I mean, if you're called to be this, if you feel attracted to it, it's for you. It says right here. And in some way, in their own Bible, they will find something to interpret that there was a grand design that came to the Buddha, that came to prophets of our religion that said, here is a message for who? Not just you suckers, everybody. Now, it may take a while, and it's up to you suckers to get it going. That's why I'm talking to you, give you a chance, and it's up to you guys to get out and do the PR work and spread it. But it's for everybody. This, if there was actually a living opposite, by God, this would be it. Because not only is it not for everybody, it's just damn near not for anybody. Is it? Not that you may not be attracted to it and just every now and then think, God, I like this. And then you look off and think, yeah, but what the hell is it? Or you just think, I like it sometimes. But am I exaggerating to say, as opposed to there being a grand design of a priest of some major religion, let's say, pointing out that some of you people may not have ever heard this before, or maybe you don't read the Bible or the Old Testament or the collected baskets of Buddha or the Quran, but it's for you. It may not be translated in your language yet, and we might not have a church there, but it's for you. It's for everybody. Because there would not be some great information. It would have to be a misnomer. It would have to be a fraud if the deities, or a deity, would come down and say, all right, I'm going to send you the secret message. And here it is. But it's just for you and all the people that live within a 10-mile radius. Now that by itself is not just to get some sort of sarcastic laughter from you people, but realize that would, in fact, in the seriatim world, in a sane reality, the 3D level, that would belie, that would deny that it was actually a deity. Now, there might be some deranged, that is, outside the mainstream of life, that might go, yeah, I like that. I always wanted my own private God, just me and my immediate friends. But anybody else, life is already wired up within itself that if a deity, if there is some kind of singular power outside the system itself, is going to send out and make available secret information, no matter whether you think you like your neighbors or you like people of another color or race or nationality, it's just simply, it would have nothing to do with your intelligence. Life is wired up within itself to be that, if asked, your own nervous system would respond, you might say theoretically, but you would have to respond, is yes, this message is for everyone. Then you might mumble, I think it's too far removed from some other cultures, which may be from that kind of 3D view. But I repeat to you again, it is tied into the verbal, that is the intellectual premise of whatever it is, that there is a grand design for humanity. That is everyone who's sane enough to hear this, who's reasonable enough to hear it. This comes awfully close to being a three-dimensional, living antithesis of that. That it is not only not for everybody, it's almost so vague as to be unusable for an individual, just here and there. And yet life continues to let this kind of stuff seep out. We'll try this. There's another way. Speaking of this being something alive and so vague and so sketchy that can hardly be described, From ordinary views, it can hardly be understood. They can hardly be used. That's what ordinary intelligence tells you between the times that you might think, God, I like this. Well, this is fun. And then you lapse into, yeah, but how? What's fun about this? Why is it I was so excited 2 minutes ago or last week or Wednesday? Or God, that last thing I was thinking about, it struck me that, wait a minute, if I could take that, and it wasn't just allegorical, and do it, it was about to set me on fire, and now I can't remember. I remember I thought, well, yeah, you could do it. And I thought, yeah, you could, but damn, you can't do that. And then it's like you're back to where you started. And like, well, maybe this is not as much fun as I thought. Let me put it to you verbally, give you a map in a slightly different direction. You could look at this kind of stuff, of doing this kind of stuff, as being like another way to address the future. The last time specifically that we're taping, would you care to recall this? In another context, it was pointed out that if it could be discovered that you had a kind of conspiracy going on between premises, that whatever the conclusions are would be unprofitable, inoperable for any sort of extraordinary use. Let me expand that. But if you didn't get that, and not many of you seem to have got much from it last time. What if there was a possibility that all ordinary answers to all ordinary questions were more or less already determined? Now, before you people on tape take that as being some kind of transcendental pseudo-mysticism or science fiction, ponder several other things that are pretty straightforward, even verbally. You've got to have an intellect this sharp to ever get much further with pursuing this sort of stuff. That is, if you took three-dimensional reality, just what it is, the life of the senses, forgetting all those kind of easy, slippery statements that life runs by people all the time about, well, let's talk about information that somewhere is available only outside the five senses. And people say that in public, in print, on television even. And many other people go, yeah, go ahead. When if they had any possibility of being vague and sketchy enough to get outside the grand designs for everyone, they'd go, wait a minute, there is no such thing. But back to the main track. You got to be sharp enough to follow this, and it's not theoretical, it is reality. That people outside of doing this skate around the edges of understanding the validity of picturing this, at least. That is, if three-dimensional reality is simply part of something else. It's not science fiction. And even though I put it rhetorically, and those of you who've been around a while know that I mean it more than that. If you could perceive ordinary reality, just life as it is, nothing weird, nothing questionable, but just the life of everyday people, that is, the three-dimensional world. If you could begin to perceive that that is simply part of, let us say at least, a five-dimensional world, just for an example. And what you're getting, if you could picture, again right quick, some kind of five-dimensional, if not that, at least an object floating here that was more than three dimensions. You have to picture three dimensions like a cube floating here, and that's our universe. And then you've got to just go with it, that outside the three-dimensional cube, it also goes somewhere else. Ordinary intellect stops there because it's three-dimensional. But imagine that instead of the face being one dimension, then you go around this side and that's two dimensions, and you go up there in the back and it's three dimensions. All right, then imagine it can go off in another direction, and then even another. If that were true, then you've got to see it's not that this is a world of some kind of delusion. You can't, it's not a world of limited access because of our senses. That's all you've got at the ordinary level. But simply see this. It's not evil. It's not questionable. It's a matter of whether you can begin to see that even what is occurring here could only be, let us say, a five-dimensional reality. That you're only getting 3/5 of what's going on. It's not that what you're seeing here is wrong, but it is, in this case, and I'm just using it as an example, that 2/5 of what's actually going on you can't see. It'd be like a movie. That was your life, and it's a three-dimensional. Let's say it's a holographic movie, and yet somewhere in other rooms, upstairs, down the basement, the movie, the film that's running through, 2/5 of it never gets in the projector. And so what you see, you have to make some sense out of. And the way life is arranged, it does make some sense. And then every now and then you wonder, why did this happen? Why did that scene happen? And there seems to be nothing in the movie, that is your life, your intelligence, that actually explains it. But what if you're missing 2/5 of the show? That things happen over here in the other dimensions, and of course it affects here. And I'm not even going to say that it can't run and seep back that way. But if it just runs this way, what you're getting is only part of what's going on. Even the old idea of cause and effect, one of the philosophers, that is why intellects cannot answer cause and effect, is that the 3D level, there is no real answer, because what they're calling cause, that is a linear reality, which is the way the intellect has to work and perceive life working, is the old thing about shooting the cue ball against a billiard ball over here. That's obviously cause and effect, right? That the cue ball hits that and makes that move, and then they get into other discussions of, wait a minute, you could look at it another way. Let's go back to just serial reality, the way the intellect works under ordinary conditions of the electrochemical basis of the way the brain is working. What seems to be your thought, what seems to be something that you said, something that you felt, something went through your nervous system, people ordinarily take credit for it, or in a weak moment they say, well, God's or the devil's made me do it, my background, my unconscious. But insofar as they're concerned, something in the sensual 3D world, it may have been unconscious reactions to some of the traumas of my childhood now making me do this. But what if it was outside this dimension? That the billiard ball, the cue ball, was shot over there, and now you're pinging off, you and everyone else, off of, bouncing off this rail. That is not science fiction. It is not even metaphysical. But it offers this. If you can begin to perceive, not that as a theoretical possibility, you can begin to perceive it as being a part of what's going on right now, then it offers up a possibility to, at least verbally, for the time being, for me to, while pointing out that this is, in a sense, a way to address the future in a different way, would be first off then to say that there could be two kinds, on the basis of this, of futures. We'll name them, or I will, a limited future and a loose future. Now the limited future is what I was suggesting. If you begin to perceive that this, without any doubt, not theoretically, and no matter, you don't have to live by my description, because my description is just a brand name. I just made all this up. But me saying this three-dimensional reality, for sake of my continuing example tonight, would be only a part of a five-dimensional reality. So what would appear to be the future here would be a limited future. And for me to suggest, as I did rhetorically 5 or 7 minutes ago, the possibility that all ordinary answers to all ordinary questions are more or less already determined. But you understand, it's not this kind of determinism that Calvin or Knox or Cardinal Jello or whoever it was. It's not the idea that good old Jehovah has predetermined who's going to heaven and who's going to Detroit when you die. That's why I said more or less. Because that doesn't tell you anything, but if I just said it dogmatically, it wouldn't tell you much of anything. But to say that if we're dealing still with a five-dimensional world, and there are things going on in other rooms, around the corner, in other dimensions, that without any doubt, there's no way to discuss it, not debate it, that what's going on here is simply a part of that. Then to say, all right, what's going to come up, what's going to be answers to questions going on now, or what will the morrow bring? If you begin to have an idea that tomorrow is not simply a spatial thing, that tomorrow is part of what's going on around the corners that I can't see, then that's where it begins to fall, not unprofitably within the area I was suggesting, wherein the answers, wherein the future might be limited. That is, it's more or less determined. But I'm giving you a way out. It's not simply that a force somewhere, a singularity outside this system, has already decided, but if we're talking about additional dimensions, you've got to understand it's not simply spatial. If it was, the human intellect could find it right now. It's not a matter of spatial dimension, but that what's going on would be operating in a different time zone. And so what's going on, comparison-wise, if you could do it, if you could be conscious, if you could think about what's going on now and simultaneously be conscious there, then the way it would appear to the three-dimensional intelligence would be that this is the future. In other words, this has already happened and we haven't caught up with it yet. But it is not an unconditional verbal description, because there's no way to take additional dimensional worlds and to make unconditioned statements about it here. Because if that was possible, if the intellect here within the 3D limits could make unconditional statements about a 5D world, the intellect could be there. Hence I suggest to you, it might be more or less determined. Hence I'm saying a limited future, which of course I'll admit, if you need me to, that that's insane again, that the future is either the future is not. There can't be a provisional future. Oh yeah? Think about it. A limited future. If you are operating at the level of intelligence that is endogenous to the three-dimensional level of reality, that is, if you're just ordinary, no matter how intelligent from the IQ view or no matter how educated, but if that is all you can see, does it strike those of you with some abilities now, does it strike you as all that strange to say a fair description, a working description, as temporary as it may be, might be that at that level the future should actually be called limited future? Not saying absolutely determined that I can look at you and tell you exactly what will happen. Whether I could or not, it's of no consequence. But it's not to say that. It's not for you to say that. It's not for you to think that. That I know exactly what will happen. But does it sound that strange when you think about what you know about your life thus far and its nexus with everything else? To say, yeah, I'm real surprised the way things have turned out for me. Yeah, I really am. I'm shocked by it. Whereas maybe 2 or 3 months ago or before you got involved in this kind of stuff, you might have stood there and defied a firing squad if I said, come on, you go tell me that you're surprised that your life turned out just like it is now, and you go, yeah, I am. Because by God, I had dreams I wanted to do so-and-so, and I was already planning to do so-and-so, and I was trying to work on it. And then these surprises, these transient anomalies happened in my life and threw me off the track, and just, well, terrible things. I don't want to go into them. All right, I will go into them. Well, you should know that is part of the nature of the general wiring and priming system of run-of-the-mill human nervous systems. That they'll say, nah, this is not the way I planned my life. No, if I'd had any more control, or if some of these circumstances had not been so far outside my control and unexpected, I would have blah, 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 blah. But all you got to do is just have a modicum of so-called self-knowledge, just enough perhaps to fit into Socrates' navel, to be asked, or to ask yourself, no matter if you're staying there and you've lost one leg and you're bald and you're broke and you've been married 17 times and all of your wives not only sued you, but all of them got at least over $1 million judgment and alimony, and you're out of work. And you can stand there and go, I am shocked. But if you know anything, if there's anything to your intelligence outside the ordinary, the truth is by now, in a way that you wouldn't have to say, it's not to prove that I'm right. And there's no real, totally satisfying verbal response to this. But if you ask yourself, am I all that surprised? It's kind of a limited response, of a limited freedom, because you'd have to say, well, no, more or less, I'm not all that surprised. But that really doesn't cover it, because you at some time did not think 20 years ago that you'd be right where you are now. But if you have to actually respond in a way that's somewhere close to a new building site in your own brain, that if I or you could ask yourself, now, are you actually surprised that your life right this second, where you are, what you seem to think, the whole milieu of you in your, with you in your milieu, the whole connection, are you actually surprised? Do you find it to be that unjust? Are you that shocked? And the truth is, because I wouldn't do this to you, because the answer is not really no or yes. But the truth is, you're not all that surprised. Not just because of you personally and your circumstance, but if you know anything, you know something about the nature of life, and even if you're staying there with one leg and out of work and bald, so what? You look around, and all you got to do is look for 2 or 3 minutes and you'll find somebody else that got no legs. In other words, there's nothing singular about your position, either good or bad. And so, it's only ordinary intelligence will say, I am shocked at what's happened to my life. I would have never suspected I would turn out this way. Well, everybody could say that. But if you're beyond the level of everybody, the answer is, no, I ain't that shocked. Not just because of you personally, because of what you understand about life. Now, do you see, the reason I went off on that small tangent, that it is not completely without some profit, I suggest you to consider my term, well, 2 terms, but specifically of a future that would be a limited future. Because if you continue to live at the ordinary level, and you knew anything, you've got to forget what you knew, because to live at the ordinary level and to believe that there's an unlimited future, then you believe that, yeah, here I stand now, broke, 17 women and their attorneys on my back, and I got one leg and my hair's falling out and driving me crazy. But, I don't know, I just got a feeling that, before the year's out, I'm going to hit the jackpot, win the lottery, and somebody, if not Bernstein, is Adrian, somebody going to say, aren't you the guy that's been writing those symphonies on the side all these years? And they're going to look at them and just go, oh my God. And I don't know. In other words, I think things are really drastically going to turn around. I'll be rich and famous this time next year. See, that seems to be a non-limited future. And you've got to be ordinary to believe that. Because if you know anything, those of you who think you're missing this is not the point. But if we were giving a very simplistic psychological description, or even philosophical, it's on the basis that once you know something about you out of the ordinary run of old-time information about you and the way life is arranged, you would know that based upon the way I have been operating now, based upon what has been me, there's no way it's going to change drastically. This right now, I believe, is a perfect preview, if we were in a movie, of my coming attractions. The movie I'm playing, what I am this week, let's face up to it, folks. This is going to be me 10 years from now. Probably a little less hair, maybe a little more hostile. But to believe that there's going to be a drastic change, you've got to be ordinary. Therefore, I refer you back to where we were, that there is some validity to my term of a limited future, which belies reason, because the future from 3D views, from the operations of the intellect in the 3D world as it's supposed to operate with ordinary people, the future, by its very definition, the future has got to be open. It's got to be unconditional. Or else you'd have to fall into something such as everything is prearranged, it's all predetermined, the gods have all set it up, there's no way to escape from it, which is not, never has been, the mainstream that life needs of human thought. I know there are cults here and there and splinter groups, which that's not the point. That is, as always, life has got enough room for everything. It tries a little bit of everything. But the mainstream throughout the world, no matter what their background, their culture, religion, so-called, nationality, that is not the mainstream. That is not the middle of the bell curve in life via man, through man. The future, its operational definition is the future can be whatever I want it to be, within some reason. The future is whatever humanity makes it to be. But consider, not that that's adamantly incorrect, not that the opposite is true, but what if the description, what I'm trying to hint to you, point to in a sketchy way, that there is a future in the 3D world like everywhere else, because Saturday still comes after whatever it comes after. But rather than the future being, well, it has no conditions, the future is whatever we want, what if the future is limited? Not through some flaw in mankind, not through the operations of some well-intended or nefarious deity that decides, well, I'm not going to let these people get away with that. Or they made me mad last year or back in the 1700s and I'm still a little upset by it. Can you say pissed on cable? I start laughing. Angry. That it's still the future, but it is outside the operational purview of the ordinary intellect to say, all right, it is the future, and it's not absolutely determined. I'm not going to tell you that because that's misleading. But to believe that, well, the future is just an open book, that's just as misleading for you to continue to believe that. There could be a future, but belying the ordinary definition of the future. It could be a future, but it could be a limited future. I continue to suggest we're running out of time where I was going to try and tie it where I started, that if that's true, then you're faced with this, that there, in areas that you can discover any collusion between the premises, then whatever the conclusion is going to be dysfunctional, is going to be unprofitable for someone attempting to think in a new way. That whatever answers ordinarily are available in life, no matter what the questions were, the answers will always be more or less predetermined. That is, again, unprofitable, useless for this kind of stuff. No matter what they are. It's not that the answer is right or wrong. It's not the conclusion is correct or incorrect. It is simply that it was a result of collusion. The princes that get together, remember, once a month, a couple of times a year, in secret and plan out the kind of warfare, the threatened warfare, the tensions, the threats that they tell their people is going on, and yet they're unbeknownst, they're blood cousins. They're doing it, in my example, not for nefarious purposes. They're doing it for the welfare of the people. But you couldn't tell the people that. Now, if you consider the kinds of conflicting information, the kind of premises in the 3D world that says, right, that's up. And if that's up, that's down, and they're two different things. And if you say that that is down, you're an idiot. What if the premises, that's up, that's down, the premises are the two princes going off and they're in collusion? That it's good for the human intellect, it keeps it alive, it gives it some kind of impetus, it gives it energy for us to tell the nervous system, the brain, that up is opposite from down and the two cannot occupy the same space. That one thing cannot be true and be false. And they don't sit there and laugh and think, yeah, what a bunch of dumbasses, we can tell them that and they'll believe it, although it's true. But the princes realize, well, that'd be good for them because their life is thinking that the human nervous system, the brain, should develop faster. I'm in a hurry. I need more help from humans. And so it sets up these conspiracies between areas that appeared to be in conflict. But enough of you when I came up with those kinds of descriptions that some people even believe in a very primitive way, but there could be forces apparently in conflict in life, like these two kings or princes that are actually in collusion. And they just tell their people, all right, our neighbor's going to attack us. We got to stay on the ball. I got to increase taxes. You people got to work harder. Stay prepared. Stay alert, because they'll attack at any time. I know it. I can't tell you how, but I'm on the ball, and I've got these kind of spies. There are things going on. Any day now they could attack us and just wipe us out. And most of them, if you hadn't realized it, most of them act like and look like IRS people. And they're just scared. And so it keeps the people alive. But it's for their benefit. But for this sort of stuff, to be a revolutionist, to be a real explorer, whatever the information is, whatever the conclusions are, whatever the answers are, if it is discovered to have been a product of a collusion, it's useless. And I guess I've hinted enough. I'm telling you, just outright, that all ordinary information, all ordinary conclusions, all ordinary answers to all ordinary questions are in some way a product of a conspiracy. Not to mislead you, it's to help you if you're ordinary. And if you're ordinary, the help is to keep you ordinary. To make ordinary existence tolerable. There is the possibility we're going to have to pick up next time, that's figuratively speaking, we don't have to, of the loose future, which would be, as you might suspect, something I'd be hinting around that might be more native to someone who could operate in a place that is so sketchy and so vague that you're not even sure that whatever you're doing is applicable to anything in particular. But does that not sound like perhaps, compared to a limited future, a loose future? That you might be able to cease doing things individually that's required of everyone else generally. That you might be able to cease being held by thinking in such a way that everybody else is in general, that individually you might be able to escape from it and find a new place. Would that not qualify vis-a-vis what I described the limited future as a loose future? We're out of time until I see you in the future.